Hello, sports fans. Welcome to Sports Central. Today, we're going to be going over my Week 3 UFL power ranking. So, briefly recapping Week 2, the Stallions beat the Panthers 21-12, the Defenders defeated the Showboats 17-12, the Renegades barely beat the Showboats, winning 11-9, and the Battlehawks dominated the Brahmas, winning 26-9. But getting into my rankings, beginning at number 8, I've got the Roughnecks. So the Roughnecks, they remain at number 8 after they lost to the Renegades by a score of 11-9. They came back to make it a 2-point game with a minute 13 left, although they couldn't get the 2-point conversion to tie it. Offensively for the Roughnecks, they were not good for the second straight week, as they were held to single digits once again. Quarterback Anthony Brown was a little bit better, although he still wasn't great, as he went 14 of 30 for 179 yards, a touchdown, and an interception, and he also had 20 yards on the ground, which led the team. Now, Anthony Brown did look pretty good on the Roughnecks' only touchdown drive late in the game, but there's still a lot of improvement that needs to be made for this Roughneck offense. Then defensively, the Roughnecks, they looked a lot better this week. They tackled well, they held the Renegades just 11 points, and they forced a turnover. So at least they're showing some improvement on the defensive side of the ball, but the Roughnecks, I still don't think they're that great, and I've got them at number 8 in my power. Coming in at number 7, I've got the Brahmas. So the Brahmas enter at number 7 after they lost to the Battlehawks by a score of 26-9. And this is now back-to-back blowout losses for the Brahmas to start the season after they lost to the Renegades 33-9 last week. But the offense was not good for the Brahmas. Quarterback Kellen Mond completed just half his passes for 129 yards and an interception, and the offensive line also did not play well, allowing 4 sacks. Now, the Brahmas did run the ball pretty effectively, rushing for 112 yards and a touchdown while averaging 5.9 yards per carry. But just like last week, they had to abandon the run because they were down by 17 halfway through the second quarter. Then the Brahmas' defense was not good either, as they allowed 26 points and 319 yards, letting run over for the second straight week. And the Brahmas, they have gotten off to a terrible start here this season, and I've got them at number 7 in my power rankings, although I could understand having them at number 8 because their 2 games haven't been close. Coming in at number 6, I've got the Showboats. So the Showboats enter at number 6 after a 17-12 loss to the Defenders. And despite the loss, the Showboats, they actually look kind of solid. They showed some potential with head coach Ken Wisenhunt back on the sideline, and the offense was solid. They let quarterback E.J. Perry play the entire game, which is something they definitely needed to do, because it allowed the offense to get into a rhythm. And Perry, he finished the game with 194 yards and an interception, and also had a 26 yards and a touchdown on the ground. And the Showboats, they ran the ball effectively, rushing for 103 yards and a touchdown on 4 yards per attempt. And receiver Jonathan Adams had a huge game with 9 catches for 128 yards, and he's the first 100-yard receiver this season. And then defensively, the Showboats, they looked pretty good despite the loss. They held the Defenders to 257 yards, and they held them to just 1 for 3 in the red zone. And I think this is a solid Showboats team, despite the loss and them being 0-2. I definitely think they're the best winless team, and I've got them at number 6. Coming in at number 5, I've got the Panthers. So the Panthers fall to number 5 after 21-12 loss to the Stallions. The Panthers' offense was not good with just 12 points, and they didn't score a single point until the fourth quarter. And I really don't like what the Panthers did at quarterback, because Bryce Perkins got the start, but Danny Etling also saw a few drives, but he wasn't great. But I think the Panthers just need to stick with Bryce Perkins. Now, Perkins didn't have his best game, as he completed 12 of his 23 passes for 132 yards, a touchdown, and an interception, and he also had 30 yards as a runner. And I think the Panthers need to use him a lot more as a runner, because of how good of a runner he is. Why not use that to your advantage? But the Panthers, they did run the ball pretty effectively, with 120 yards as a team on 4.6 yards per carry. And then the Panthers' defense was solid, as they held the Stallions to just 1 for 4 in the red zone and forced a couple of turnovers. And it was really the defense that kept the Panthers in this game with how bad their offense was, but it was the offense that was allowed them to not be able to get the win, and I've got the Panthers at number 5 in my power. Coming in at number 4, I've got the Stallions. So the Stallions move up to number 4 after they beat the Panthers by a score of 21-12, and even though the Stallions didn't play their best game, they still got the win. Stallions starting quarterback Alex Magoo suffered a shoulder injury on the first play from scrimmage, but backup quarterback and last year's Week 1 starter Matt Corral played pretty well in relief of Alex Magoo, as he threw for 198 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Now, Corral definitely needs to cut down on the turnovers, considering he threw 2 picks, and also had a couple other plays where he could have been picked off. But overall, he played pretty well, made some nice throws down the stretch, including a 52-yard touchdown to Deion Kane to seal the win. And Deion Kane, he also had a good game with 4 catches for 84 yards and a score. And the Stallions' offensive line was a lot better this week. After allowing 8 sacks in week 1, they did not allow a single sack this week, and that was one of the major differences offensively. Then the Stallions' defense played very well, holding the Panthers to just 12 points. They forced 2 turnovers, and their pass rush was great with 3 sacks. But the Stallions, they got a nice bounce back win. They've got to figure out what they're going to do at the quarterback position, if they want to go back to Alex Magoo if he's healthy, or if they want to have Matt Corral start. But a solid performance for the Stallions. Not their best game, but they won, and I've got them at number 4. Coming in at number 3, I've got the Renegades. So the Renegades fall spot to number 3 after they barely beat the Roughnecks 11-9. And the reason they fall is they were very unconvincing against a bad Roughnecks team, as they won by just 2. But the Renegades offense didn't play their best game with just 11 points, although they made some big plays when they needed to down the stretch. Quarterback Luis Perez was pretty good with 211 yards and a touchdown, and the Renegades ran the ball fairly well with 100 rushing yards and 63 of them coming from Day Hunter. And receiver Isaiah Winstead also had a nice game with 7 catches for 73 yards. Then the Renegades defense dominated for the second straight week. They allowed just 9 points and held the Roughnecks to 225 yards and also forced a turnover. But despite it not being the prettiest win for the Renegades, a win is a win, and I've got them at number 3. Second, I've got the Defenders. The Defenders move up to number 2 after they beat the Showboats 17-12. And this is another team this week that I don't think played their best game. The Defenders, they still got the win, although Jordan Tayama wasn't great, as he went 12 of 26 for 152 yards and a touchdown, but he missed some big downfield throws that likely would have resulted in touchdowns. So big missed opportunities there for the Defenders. But the Defenders, they did run the ball well, with 113 yards as a team, including 55 from Abram Smith. And the Defenders' defense played well once again. They didn't quite have the 8-sack performance like they had last week, but they were still good. They forced the Showboats to settle for 3 field goals, forced 3 turnovers, and allowed just 12 points. But the Defenders, they were solid in their win over the Showboats, and they move up to number 2 in my power rankings. And coming in at number 1, I've got the Battlehawks. The Battlehawks, they remain at number 1 after they dominated the Brahmas, winning 26-9. The Battlehawks' offense was great. Quarterback Manny Wilkins was extremely efficient, completing 12 of his 16 passes for 162 yards. And once again, the Battlehawks had a big game on the ground, as they ran for 164 yards and 3 touchdowns, and all 3 scores came from Jacob Sailors, who is probably the early MVP frontrunner. And then defensively, the Battlehawks, they were great. They allowed just 9 points, got consistent pressure with 4 sacks, and they forced a turnover. But the Battlehawks, they've looked great so far this season. They look like the most complete team through 2 weeks, and the Battlehawks, they've remained at number 1 in my power rankings. But those are my Week 3 UFL power rankings. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, turn notifications. I do my best to post as often as possible, and I will see you in the next video.